Assalamualaikum. Hello everyone. Alright, so today I want to present about construction quantification achievement, the effects of individual cognitive ability and demographic profile differences. So this is the title of my research. Before we start to proceed with the presentations, let me explain a little bit about the definitions of terms so that everybody can clear about what is my research is all about. So basically, my research title will be related to the construction quantification achievement. So I will focus in terms of to identify about the cognitive ability, which is for example, as we know, learners or students, basically they have two types of abilities. For example, high spatial visualizations or low spatial visualizations. So in that case, in order for me to identify the construction quantification achievement of students, so we will focus to these types of student. And then my research also will identify in terms of the demographic profile of the students, because the students also will have two types. In terms of gender, basically we have two types of gender, for example, male or female students. And then in terms of the age, basically I will focus to two categories of students. For example, whether the student is 19 to 20 years old students, or the second category, which is the student that age 21 to 20 years old students. So basically, this will be the definitions of terms and that will be used along the way of my research. So in terms of the definitions of the construction quantifications, so basically it's actually will be related to the measurement or technical estimation skill for the quantity surveying program. So as for the quantity surveyor professionals, basically they need to have ability to quantify and enumerate. So it means that during the educational training of the QS students, the student must be able to measure or quantify by using a technical drawing. Okay, so the construction quantifications basically will be related to the technical estimation skill of the student when they want to perform the construction quantification task, which is a problem solving task. So basically my research will be related to cognitive ability, as I mentioned earlier. So cognitive ability, it is actually will be related to an imagination skill. So it is ability to see things in the mind eye. So we want to identify whether the student have this kind of ability. For example, whether the student able to mentally manipulate, rotate, twist or invert 2 or 3D dimensional visual stimuli in their head. So it is very important for the QS student to have this kind of imagination skill when they want to perform the construction quantification task, because this is actually a problem solving task. So in my research, basically we want to identify accurately in terms of whether the student have the ability to understand the 3D object through their 2D representations, because students basically will have two types. Sometimes we have high spatial visualization students. It means that the student will have high imagination skill, so it will be no problem for them to perform in terms of the construction quantification skill task. And then we also will have low visualization students. It means that students that have low imagination skill, so this kind of students sometimes they will face some sort of difficulties when they want to perform this kind of task, which is the construction quantification task. So in my research, basically we will focus in terms of the differences that relate to the demographic profile of the students. We want to see in terms of the individual ways or method of processing informations, because different students basically they will have their own way or preferences how they want to process informations in their head. So in that case, we will focus in terms of the individual typical modes of perceiving, remembering, and problem-solving ability. So this one basically will focus in terms of what are the differences of the students that will be related to their demographic profile. So my research, the research background basically has started when we identify one of the issues which has been highlighted in the 12th Malaysian Plan 2020 to 2025. So basically it is actually related to the visions of the government and the employer of the construction industry itself, how they want to identify or get the outstanding human capitals. It means that they want to get the best employee in terms of that have best benefit package in terms of the knowledge, skill and also attitude. They want to aim for a better student outcome, and of course the government, they want to reduce the skill gap. Okay, for example, when the student have their training, the education training, when they join the industry, they want to make sure that there is no gap. It means that the students, the future graduates, can perform well. So in my research, basically I will focus in terms of the job specific skill that will be related to the constructions of the technical field, that will focus for the professional, for example engineer, architect or quantity surveyor. Okay, so to be specific, the focus is towards the quantity surveyor professionals. So basically we will identify in terms of the quality of education and performance, because we want to identify the development of skill during the education process, and we want to identify in terms of whether the student have the strength lifelong learning. And then it will be related to the skill that must be possessed by the quantity surveyor, future graduate of the quantity surveyor, which is the learners of the quantity surveying program students, so which is the construction measurement skill. It will be related, it is actually the core competencies of the QS program. So because the employee expectations is very high, when they want to seek for the employee, when they want to seek for the QS professional, basically it is actually the highest rank level of knowledge. Okay, they want to identify, they want to have the employee that have the best skill of construction measurement skill or construction quantification skill. Okay, because previous research has highlighted in terms of the relevance and importance of this skill, because most of the previous of the industry, most of the people agree that 80% reply strongly agreeing in terms of the importance about the construction measurement skill. So in that case, my research will be focusing in terms of the cognitive skill of the students, which is related to the spatial visualization ability of the students. And then I will also focus in terms of the individual differences of the students, because we want to identify the different student demographic profile, because as we know, the student, of course, they will have diversity and mixed profile. So we want to identify whether there are differences has effects to the performance of the construction quantification. So the problem statement of my research basically has started when we identify that most of the employer, they are expected to have a best qualified QS with the anticipated skill requirement, and then when they want to recruit the employee, sometimes they have problem because it seems that some of the employees are not prepared for the demands of the industry careers, because they have difficulties when they want to perform their tasks, especially when they need to deal with the 2D representations of drawing, because when they want to measure the quantification skill, basically they need to have the ability, the imagination skill, which is the transformations of 2D representation to 3D representation. And then when they have that kind of difficulties, basically it will give less effective achievement in terms of the skill performance, and of course that will give in terms of the quality of the current teaching and learning system, it is actually have give some sort of trigger the awareness how they want to solve that kind of problem, because nowadays it seems that when there is lack of careful thought on different student characteristic and learning aspect, it actually has give effects to the performance of the student itself, and at the end of the day they cannot perform well. So in that case, my research basically will focus in terms of these two key factors, which is related to the cognitive ability skill, whether the student have high or low spatial visualization ability, and we also will identify in terms of the individual differences that will be related to gender differences and also age differences, because in this research it is very important for us to identify does individual cognitive and demographic profile differences actually influence the construction qualifications achievement. The finding will be very crucial for influencing the student intellectual performance and educational outcome in construction quantifications. So in this research, basically at the end of the study, the finding basically will propose in terms of the understanding the relationship effects between the student cognitive ability and demographic profile to academic achievement, whether it could assist the teaching and learning approach in the future. So the research objective of my research, basically I have two. I want to identify to determine the effects of gender differences on the level of spatial visualization ability achievement score and the quantifications achievement. And then the second one, I want to identify or determine the effects of age differences on the level of spatial visualization ability achievement score and the quantifications achievement. So this basically will be related in terms of the research problem which has been mentioned earlier. So for my research, basically I'm focusing to the construction quantification achievement, which related to the cognitive ability and also demographic profile. My focus is towards the public university learners, which is the diploma, or we call it as a semi-professional criteria. Okay, so the respondent basically will be identified in order for me to determine the qualified respondent. So it means that the student, for example, must have completed one or construction qualifications course at the previous semester, because at the end of the day, during the experiment, they need to complete the construction quantification test. So the method that I'm using is actually quantitative approach. And then the instrument, I will have 3 instruments, which is the demographic background questionnaire, spatial visualization ability test, and also quantification test. The population and research sample will come from the public university. So there are 3 steps in my research. The first step basically will be related to the first test, which is the spatial visualization test. The student need to do this test in order for me to identify the level of the visualizations of the students. And then the student also needs to answer the demographic background questionnaire, because we want to identify the demographic profile of the students. And then at the end of the process, the student needs to do the quantification achievement test, because we want to identify the performance of the student that relate to the cognitive ability and also the demographic profile of the students. So this is actually the result and discussions of my research. So as you can see here, in terms of the correlations between the spatial visualization ability test score and the construction quantification achievement, it is actually has shown a significant relationship, because as you can see in the graph just now, we can see there is a straight line here. It is about 65.3% of the variance in the construction quantification achievement. So it means that the correlations between the student's spatial visualization ability and the performance is actually quite high, because it gives in terms of the statistically large positive relationships about 0.808, which it can be concluded that the spatial visualization ability test score of the respondents to the construction quantification achievement is actually a significant one. And it is very good because it's actually in parallel with the reviews of literature because in order for the students to perform in the construction quantifications task, basically they need to have the imagination and visualizations skill, because this is actually one of the essential attributes and qualities of the quantification skill. So lots of scholars agree in terms of the effects of the spatial visualizations ability on learners' achievement. So in that case, the statistic has shown that it is actually the result is in parallel with what has been mentioned from the previous research. And then in terms of the relationships, significant difference between the gender, male and female, and also between the age, basically it has shown that there is no significant difference in the followings. Because in my research, the findings have shown that there is no significant difference between spatial visualization ability score between male and female students, and there is also no significant difference between the spatial visualization ability score between age category 1 and category 2 students. It is similar to the construction quantification score. There is between male and female student, and also age differences, because there is no significant difference in these two categories. So basically, educational theorists believe that integrating cognitive factors such as spatial ability and student-specific characteristics in learning influence student achievement, as it was a great concern to enhance the achievement of students with lower spatial abilities. However, in this research, the age and gender differences on the level of spatial visualization ability are found to be not significant. Same goes to the measurement of construction quantification achievement. So, in this case, it actually has triggered another questions. In reality, are individual differences in cognitive ability and demographic profile valid or not? Or does the key factors under these two conditions, gender and age, are valid or not? So in that case, because this is actually the primary research, so consequently, for the purpose of validations and to verify the conclusions of my research, a further simulation study with other respondents will be conducted as a replications, because in replications is very important for me to examine the extent to which gender and age differences achievement are valid or not. So to note, the previous research is required to be compared and confirmed by carrying out another experiment known as a replication. So that will be the future experiment. So it is very important to verify that the observed gender differences score will not affected by any bias conditions issues, especially during the experiment, because there is a concern that maybe there is a bias conditions trigger the findings or the result of my research. So in that case, when we proceed with the replications experiment, if the mean comparisons by a t-test was not significant for all replications respondent, then at that time there will be final conclusions that the observed gender differences on the spatial visualization ability score can be considered as well not affected by the item bias. Okay, so that will be the conclusions of my research. So that's all. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.